you cannot build a life which is only driven by success. You cannot, because a byproduct of success is failure. I genuinely feel reasonably dispassionate on most days about success and failure. It's not just you who's changing, but the world around you is also changing. Some years back, you would always be told that the problem of India is that you've got a very large population. Today, we look at that as a massive opportunity.
What kind of relationship do you have with imposter syndrome?
Pursue your curiosity and learn enough about that. I realize that in any skill that you have to keep working at it and keep getting better. If you are doing that, that's one way in which you get over the imposter syndrome.
One requires a wake-up call to switch gears and reinvent self. You continue to reinvent yourself. I mean, how do you do that?
As you are trying out different elements, you begin to also become aware. Sometimes you take up a role because your personal circumstances demand that change. So I think, the notion of a career takes you on your journey through life. It's going to be many, many different things, not just one. So in the new book, Career 3.0, I talk about the fact that we all believe that if you have the skill and the degree, that's your passport for your career. It's one of the many hundred factors that shapes your career. It can be things that are changing inside you. People who you've studied with, they all have the same degree, but everybody's career ends up in different places, and their own life journey ends up in many different places. No two people have the same career path. Your career path is probably just as unique as your fingerprint. The philosophy in Gita says that, karm kiya ja, phal ki chinta mat kar. This distinction between failure and success actually doesn't matter in the long run. Really, it doesn't.
Abhijit, what a pleasure having you here. Thank you so much for being here. It's like, you have been one of my childhood heroes. Since the time you were with Wipro, you were with Microsoft, I've seen you doodling. I've been in awe of your storytelling. I've been in awe of your theatrical skills. I've been in awe of the way you talk, the way you conduct yourself. Such a pleasure having you here. Thank you so much for being my guest.
Thank you, Gaurav. You really put me on the spot with so many appreciative things. It's just very kind of you. Thank you. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you.
And Abhijit, while I was preparing for this conversation, I was going through my notes. I said, let me just dig deeper within myself and see what are the genuine questions I would like to ask Abhijit. Why has he been a teacher for me? And we have not met many times. We have met a couple of times in the past. Yeah, I've been doing these conversations for so long. For me, this is my lifeline. Every time when I get into a conversation with someone, I get energized. And yet, imposter syndrome was knocking at my door. What kind of relationship do you have with imposter syndrome?
Well, thanks. That's such a terrific question to get started. I think when you look at the imposter syndrome, it's when people tell you that it's a problem that you need to overcome. Then you start worrying about all of that. I, think that we all have moments when you don't know enough. So then you pursue your curiosity and learn enough about that. But when you put a term like imposter syndrome, I think it actually comes in the way. And therefore you realize that's another barrier. If I gave you another barrier, that you must overcome, you'll start thinking about those. I realize that in any skill that you have to keep working at it and keep getting better, because the way you develop yourself is that you keep pushing the limit and trying to do something beyond what you've done. And if you are doing that, that's one way in which you get over the imposter syndrome any which way, that you realize you are able to push your limits and do much more than what you have done before. The second is, as you are doing that, beyond a certain point of time, as you build your skill, you begin to start, if your work is out there, when other people are noticing the work that you've done, they notice this big difference. It's a bit like, when you are growing tall in front of people who see you every day, they don't probably notice how tall you become. But then when there's somebody who visits you, they say, oh my God, you've really grown much taller. I think our skills are also like that. People around you don't really see that you've grown so much taller, but others will tell you that.
Looking at your career, looking at your life, if you were to use only 3 words that can sum up your life, what would those 3 words be and why?
Three words, if it was not connected, three words, I would say, curiosity, creativity, and communication. Curiosity helps you go beyond what you've done, so you are able to meet people from different professions. You meet, people of across different ages, uh, different countries. All of that, is driven by curiosity. Creativity is all about, learning something, then trying out something beyond that, building on that. And then, of course, as you communicate that, your all the work that I do think in terms of communication, I believe that that's one way as you give back. It's actually the most powerful way in which you grow. So, as I write
Mm,
my blog, it clarifies my own thinking. So, writing is a way of investing in myself. And of course,
mm.
hopefully, some other people get value in that as well. So, I think it's a combination of all these three.
Yeah. So curiosity, creativity, and communication. When I finally got a confirmation that I'm going to interview Abhijit, I was very clear that I'm going to dig deeper into that people find it very difficult to find one expression in their life. And here is this gentleman who's been able to tap into writing, who's been able to tap into doodling, who's been able to tap into storytelling, who's been able to tap into theaters. I mean, how come on one hand, one person is struggling to find their expression, and here is another gentleman who's been able to tap into several ways to express himself.
Well, expression actually is a way in which, when you are, so you express yourself at multiple points of time. When you are unclear, the process of expression actually brings clarity to your mind as you are, talking to
Mm,
people. You share your ideas, and that sort of brings clarity to yourself. Two, a second stage of expression is, are you able to simplify it? So you've
mm,
learned multiple things. What is the essence of it? That's the second part of, understanding something. And the third part of the expression is building your own elements to that expression,
mm.
which is when, if you are able to integrate it into your work, it sort of really blends in uh, really well, because then you create your own really truly unique expression. So, for instance, I had multiple interests when I was growing up, and I think most people actually have many interests as they are growing up in their youth. The only difference is, I think I've consciously made a point to, continue trying them out. And things become easier over time. So for example, um, I learned by drawing at the back of my school notebook, or
Mm.
on pieces of paper that were lying around. And then, as you sort of start to discover that, okay, there are different kinds of, let's say, calligraphy. The moment you do it with a regular ballpoint pen and you're sort of doing that, that's great. But when you start to work with a calligraphy pen, it changes the way that what you can do. So then you can take
It
that.
does.
So to first build the talent and then build the technology around that. So I think
Mm.
is really the way that I would define it for people, that you start to build the skill by yourself and teach yourself, learn from others, do all of that. As you do it, technology will keep evolving. Today, I can draw on an iPad. I can use,
Mm.
all of, so that's another way to do it. But I still find that I really enjoy drawing in my notebook the most, so.
Yeah, yeah. I can so much relate to that, Abhijit, because I've been an artist in the past, and today in my facilitation, in my conversations with people, especially when I'm talking to large groups, I use the magic of a calligraphic pen or a marker for that matter, and it brings a very different life in the room. I mean, 9 out of 10 times, people would look at what is being drawn on a flip chart rather than listening to me. And I just love it when you said that first you develop your talent and then you enable it with technology. And I think this is one of the biggest mistakes that I have done in the past, that I would invest on technology rather than building on my muscle. And it took me some time to learn it works the other way around. Abhijit, you spoke about curiosity, creativity, communication. These are the three words that sum up your life, your career. You know, on one hand, there are two different thoughts that I've heard in from different kinds of people. people who are equally accomplished in their own lives. There's one set of thought that says that you need to find your life's work and invest yourself in that. Let that life's work consume you. On the other hand, there's another school of thoughts that says continue to live from a space of curiosity and continue to expand your skill set and continue to add those tools in your repertoire. Which school of thought has been a source of inspiration for you? And how has that designed your career, if I may?
I just wanted to learn about different sectors. So I took on roles in different parts of the world, or different kinds of companies, and that has, I think, given me a chance to see what is common, in my field, which is in talent management. What is common, what has not changed, and it does not change across different sectors, different domains, all of that. And then it's also given me a chance to understand a little bit in terms of what is unique and what is specific to this culture, what is specific to this technology, what is specific to this domain that I'm working in. And those are, the two sets of experiences that you gather. So you gather what is common and you gather what is different. I think that's what it lets you do.
Mm, mm, mm. And what's that common thread that you've been able to find across industries that have helped these leaders to grow in their respective careers?
When you think about people who are looking at trying out many different things, that's actually what I see as common to people who have grown, especially in the more recent times. Technology begins to do many, many different things for you today.
Mm, mm,
But the people who are able to stay curious are people who span different disciplines. And in my book, Career 3.0, I talk about spanning different ecosystems. So,
mm,
they are equally interested in music, they are interested in, say, mathematics, and they are interested in travel, or they're great at cooking. So all the people that I have been inspired by are people who see the commonality across each of these different ecosystems, and they are also able to see what is unique in the ecosystem. So I think that these are people who do both, and
yeah,
that's what I think I see as the people who are able to really go beyond their original starting point.
yeah,
And then there is also, sometimes you you begin to get comfortable in a particular area, and that's my biggest paranoia, that I'll start to get comfortable in a particular space. So
mm,
that sometimes made me take foolish decisions, but sometimes it's also that I've learned something unexpected. So it's always both.
mm, mm. It's so humbling to hear that as you are saying this, that I have taken some foolish decisions, and also there are decisions that I've learned a lot. I'm just wondering, Abhijit, what is that one such, if I may use the word disaster, right, or uh, unexpected result, or so-called failure for that matter, right? What is that one such disaster that you have not spoken about to many people, where you have failed to learn the lesson as well?
So, when you see a mistake that you made more than once, I mean, when it comes to taking a bet on people, I think people are so complex that
Mm,
uh, I've done both. There are people that I've taken a bet on that's turned out really well. There are places where I've taken a bet on people that's been a disaster, and it's also impacted me. So therefore, so it's both. I think that's a place where I think your learning never ends. It's a bit like the
mm,
horizon. As you walk towards it, you realize that the horizon has moved further ahead. So what you've learned is not enough. It keeps moving. I think that's where I have seen
mm,
both successes and failures. I think it is a common category. And given the fact that I've worked in talent management for so many years, that's really the area that I'm good at, and that's also the area that I really need a lot to learn from.
I'm sure. I'm sure. And when you said that, uh, when you've taken the bet on people, it has impacted you. In what ways? If you can just give some life with an example, what is
You know,
it that you had to go through?
when you take a bet on someone, when you're building teams, you sort of take a bet on people, and sometimes you're taking a bet on the wrong set of people, and that can happen in multiple ways. You take a bet on someone, and the person doesn't deliver, doesn't you know no person ever comes in completely prepared for the role that they are going to work in.
Mm,
100% of that, it doesn't happen. You come in prepared 50, 60%, and that's pretty much, I've seen people work miracles from that point of view,
mm,
onwards. But it's also that, the person comes in and stays at 60, and therefore, when that fails, you as the leader of the team bear the brunt of that failure. So
absolutely.
that's
Yes.
really been something that has happened to me more than once.
Mm,
So uh, I I think that that's something that I haven't learned enough about.
mm, mm. Yeah. Yeah. And at times it becomes really tricky because one of your values is pulling you in one side, another value is pulling you on the other side. And that's where you are struggling. What is the right way? What should be the next step possible? Abhijit, one of the common themes that I'm listening these days when I'm working with different leaders in the industry, that and especially post-COVID, in the era where we are in right now, especially when we are talking about artificial intelligence, people find it extremely difficult to reinvent themselves and they struggle. The other day I was talking to another friend of mine. He has written a book called Pivotal. He's saying that it's very important to keep one foot planted. That is your core strength. That has been his understanding of the way you continue to pivot. But something that I've seen you is reinventing yourself. You continue to reinvent yourself. I mean, how do you do that? And how do you continue to push yourself, to push the boundaries?
No, I think you give me more credit than it's nothing like that. You keep trying out many different things. Some fail, so don't get demoralized by that. Some things work out. Don't get too excited by that either. You keep doing different things. Um, the philosophy in Gita says that karm kiya ja phal ki chinta mat kar. So when you sort of really look at that, some good happens, some disasters also happen, and you kind of take both in your stride. As I said, I'll jump in, try out something, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. If it doesn't,
You,
just do something else.
Abhijit, when everything is going really well in your life, the career is going really smooth, you are enjoying the perks that the organization offers you, then one requires a wake up call to switch gears and reinvent self. What has been those knocks at the door or wake up calls for you that helped you to confront to yourself, hey, Abhijit, this is the time to reinvent. Learn this, move on. Learn this, move on.
I also think that sometimes you learn from what's happening. So there are multiple triggers. It can be things that are changing inside you, the things that are that you feel you want to learn something else and sort of really drawn by that, so want to learn about a different sector. I sort of get drawn by that, and therefore when I wanted to work in advertising, so I sort of did that because that sounded interesting. I just thought that I don't know too many people in HR who have consciously worked in advertising, and sort of really taking that opportunity, give me a chance to explore a relatively unexplored field. But also, as you are trying out different elements, you begin to also become aware. Sometimes you take up a role because your personal circumstances demand that change. Sometimes it is, the opportunity in that space is less than an opportunity somewhere else. It could be because of that. So it's a combination of internal factors, your personal factors, the sector, the country. It's so many different things. So in the new book, Career 3.0, I talk about the fact that We all believe that if you have the skill and the degree, that's your, passport for your career. It's one of the many hundred factors that shapes your career. Many hundred
Mm.
factors. The reason is pretty straightforward. The people who you've studied with, they all have the same degree, but everybody's career ends up in different places, and
Yeah.
their own life journey ends up in many different places. So I think being able to actually think about all of them together really makes you wonder that.
Mm.
So in that sense,
Absolutely.
it's a very unique element.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And especially if I look at my career, Abhijit, when I started coaching, I'm talking about some 15, 18 years back, there were not many people um, in this domain. It was at a very nascent stage. And I remember calling myself as an evangelist of coaching. I will knock different doors and I would just talk about coaching. At that point in time, one of the fears that I had was that I am too young to be a coach. Because at that point in time, coaching was primarily for the C-suite executives. And people would tell you, people used to tell me on my face that Gaurav, we are looking for an experienced coach. And what does that mean? Somebody with gray hair or no hair. And today, if I look at, I come across a lot of young coaches. And I think the knack that they've been able to bring on table is more than the knack of coaching. I think their ability to market themselves. So how do you deal with this mental chatter that continue to question one? Are you still relevant?
If you keep trying out many different things, I kind of think that we all carry a portfolio of skills, so
Mm,
it's not one particular skill. Under every skill is a combination of micro skills, so for
mm,
example, um, one of the ways to understand it is that every person who um, gets gets to win a reality show in singing doesn't necessarily go on to build a huge career as a singer. And people have different yardsticks for success.
mm,
For some people, just winning that is success itself. Or for some people, getting invited to sing for many, many different, movies or stage shows is success. So I think people have many different ways in which success plays out. So
mm,
that's one element to keep in mind. And you've got to be clear about what's your definition of success. And therefore,
mm,
relevance or irrelevance actually is a byproduct of whether you view that as success. So if you thought that winning the reality show was your definition of success, you've had it. And then you
mm,
have to go on to do something else. But if you think that, no, that was just a stepping stone, I wanted to, become a singer like Shreya Ghoshal or, Sonu Nigam, then in which case they've got a long way to go, because then you need to build that credibility, work with so many
mm,
different people, spend that amount of time, build the variety, do as many stage shows. So
mm,
I think, the notion of a career takes you on your journey through life. It's
mm,
going to be many, many different things, not just one.
mm, 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 mm. Yeah. And I think what differentiates is something that you said, that defining what does success mean to you. I think that's where at times I have faltered. And that's the reason I need to go back to my uh, vision board and look at, hey, what did I write 3 months back? What did I write 2 years back? What did I write 10 years back? Am I still marching in that direction? And I think that's where, Abhijit, I asked you this question around finding your life's work. At what stage in your life could you find your life's work?
You start off by trying out many different things. So I spent
Mm,
the early years trying out a range of generalist roles as well as specialist roles, in employee relations or learning and development. And at that point of time, it used to be more about training and all that,
yeah.
trying out at various levels, from workman training to supervisory training, executive training, all of that. So trying out many different things, then while I was doing that, I was also teaching. So I sort of really, that helped me build more depth. And I realized this is something I like to do. It's a lot of that. I mean, it's you go to a buffet. So think about your profession as a sort of massive spread that offers many different possibilities. What kind of place will you work in? What kind of skills do you want to build? Do you want to be a generalist? Do you want to be a specialist? Do you want to be initially be a generalist, then a specialist, or the other way around? Do you want
Yeah.
to work in one country, multiple countries? So there are hundreds of metrics. Do you want to work in a small organization, a mid-sized organization, a global organization, a startup? So there are hundreds of options that one can sort of try out.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to sort of try out many different combinations. So I think that's
Yeah.
really, as you do that, you begin to start doing some things better because you've worked at it longer. And I also think that if the opportunity at that point of time, offers you that platform, then you begin to get even deeper into that same space. So I think it's a combination of what I worked on, what the world has looked at that point of time, the the organization I was working in, or being on my own, at multiple points. I kind of look at my career as a series of experiments, some which work,
Yeah.
some which don't. And so I've continued to look at that. Of course, you like it when it works and you hate it when it doesn't work. But you kind of, if you then try it out for a little while and then you pick yourself up and go ahead to the next one, even when you succeed, I think that's
Yeah.
really what matters for me.
Any single regret that you can put on a piece of paper? I wish this would not have happened.
No, I think in the short run, when you look at anything, you could potentially regret a decision. But in the long run, when you look back, I think for many of those things, you begin to see a massive value that, the
That
setback or the failure
yeah.
provided. So actually, then when you look at it over a span of time, this distinction between failure and success actually doesn't matter in the long run. Really, it doesn't. So that's why when I started by saying that karm kiya ja phal ki chinta mat kar, that keep doing your work and don't necessarily get hung up about the results, success or failure. In the
Yeah.
long run, it really doesn't matter because your success prevents you from trying many different things. So in that sense, success is not always necessarily something that's working in your favor because it makes you risk averse.
So
In the
would
same
it,
way,
yeah.
please.
No, please go ahead. Please go ahead. Please go ahead.
And failure, encourages you to try different things. So,
Mm.
it's hard to label something as success or failure.
Yeah. Yeah. At times I have found myself, Abhijit, getting stuck with something which is not working. And then later on, when I look back, I realized that it was coming from a space of ego. It was coming from a space of stuckness with an identity that I held true at that point in time. Do I have a regret for that? I can say on the hindsight, no. But did it waste a couple of years for me? My answer is yes. How do, I mean, how do you define those people who continue to look at their life as a matrix where they need to have more accomplishments rather than more experiences? Because what I'm picking up from you is it's a series of experiments that you continue to do and a series of experiences that you continue to add to your portfolio that makes it more fulfilling. But then how about
For
those
me,
people? Yeah, for you. And how about for you? And then so how about those people? For them, matrix is only about the accomplishments. What is that must be driving for them? You have worked with so many people, you have coached so many senior executives worldwide.
I think, every person has a different way in which they define their career success or failure or all of that. So I think it's for the people to really define it for themselves. But I kind of think that you cannot build a life which is only driven by success. You cannot,
Mm,
because a byproduct of success is failure and the other way around. The byproduct of failure is also success. So it sort of works. And at different points of time, things that you do will work. At different points of time, things that you do will not work. Because it's not just you who's changing, but the world around you is also changing. So things
mm,
which, if you think about it, some years back, you would always be told that the problem of India is that you've got a very large population. Today, we look at that as a massive opportunity,
Strength.
for India. Then you kind of say that in one particular region, you have this mineral, so it's a massive opportunity. So for example, in case of some of the countries where diamonds were mined, it's they said, oh, it's a gold rush. It's phenomenal for the country. And then you realize it's not necessarily worked out really well for that country. So I think the world changes, our definitions change, and so this whole business of I genuinely feel reasonably dispassionate on most days about success and failure. You kind of course, you feel good when something's work, and you feel miserable when it doesn't. But I think the important piece is to just not get attached to either of them. I mean, so like I was chatting with somebody who does a lot of work on translation, and I was saying that we started working together. You look at the millions of books you've now translated. How do you do it? And he said something which was quite fascinating. He said that I finish one book, let's say I finish it in the morning today. In the afternoon or evening, I would have started working on the second book. I thought that was really inspirational for me. And I thought that was a penny drop moment for me that, when you start writing, for example, you write something, it gets a lot of traction, you feel very thrilled about it, you write the next one, it bombs, nobody notices it, you feel dejected. But in either case, if you start sort of telling people, hey, look at that amazing piece that I wrote, it annoys everybody else. And if you kind of keep gloating and, gosh, nobody reads what I want to write, you'll never write. So if you focus on the craft of writing, that okay, this is something that I did that worked, and this is something that I did that didn't work, and you are a lot more dispassionate about it. I think it just sort of really encourages you to try many different things. You don't get hung up about if it works well. You don't try to repeat the same thing again and again. If it doesn't work, you don't abandon it just because it didn't work once. Because there's so many examples of things that at one stage were failures, but the same thing done, 3 years later is a rocking success. And if that person had continued, it would have worked very differently for that person. So I think you just need to be a little more dispassionate about it. That's my take.
Abhijit, you have written this third book called Career 3.0.
Yeah, I've done two works of fiction in the first instance, and then I did the first nonfiction was Don't Hire the Best. Then I wrote Digital Tsunami. Then I wrote Dreamers and Unicorns. And now this is Career 3.0, the 6 skills you must have to succeed.
Yeah.
So,
so what are those 6 skills, and why you feel that they are really important, especially when there's a digital tsunami all around? There is techno stress the world is dealing with.
I think the 6 skills that are there define what you need to succeed, whether you're employed or you're on your own. So when I look at that, I find that progressively, organizations are, this whole notion of your career being defined as getting a job and then sticking to the job until you retire at a certain age. I think that's an old model. It is going to change. This notion of retirement as such is going to go away, and it's probably going to be relevance versus irrelevance. So you could become irrelevant at 20, and you could stay relevant till you are 100. I mean, Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett. When you look at that, I mean, they were relevant, until almost when they were 100. So it is really around that. The second piece is that if you sort of really start to look at the 6 skills, the first one is how do you learn what you have not been taught? The second skill is once you learn something, can you teach somebody the same skill by simplifying it, putting it in your own words and their context? The third skill is how do you become a great storyteller? The fourth skill is how do you build a strong personal brand? The fifth skill is how do you become part of multiple ecosystems and thrive in multiple ecosystems? And the sixth skill is looking at your life and your skills as more like a venture capitalist, the way they look at a portfolio, that some work, some doesn't. So some of your skills are, they are at an early stage, some have matured, and some have become obsolete. So when you start juggling your opportunities
Mm,
in that space, like a VC, you start to create more opportunities for yourself.
mm, mm, mm.
And that, I
Okay,
think, is going to be the model of careers going forward. That's the
I'm
reason why Career
sure.
3.0.
Yeah, yeah. And what do you think? Which one is the most underrated? Because I have heard people talking about it's important to learn new skills, right? The world is talking about artificial intelligence. Some time back, people were learning about blockchain and cryptocurrency, and of course, the different technical languages and all the other skills for that matter. Telling stories, personal branding, the world is talking about. What, according to you, which one is the most underrated and the most crucial one?
I think it's a combination of these six skills
Mm,
that matters to you more as you are sort of, in different stages in your career. It's not one skill; it is a combination because skills are themselves clusters of various
mm,
micro skills. Um, I think when you look at, you could turn back and say that the ability to learn something is very important. Compare yourself with what AI does. I mean, one fine day AI is speaking only in one language, and then 7 days later it speaks in 300 languages. So that's the rate at which machines learn. And if human beings have to really start to look at that, I mean,
mm,
by staying curious, you're able to learn many different things
mm.
which you haven't been formally taught. And I think that is a really big skill because we have all along been told that the only way you pick up a skill is that you go to school or college, and most people
Mm,
define that as the time when they learn the most. Um, and what happens is when you learn something in school and college, you don't have a opportunity to practice it as you are learning.
yeah.
Therefore, a lot of people will say, "Oh, I did economics, but I never used it in my life."
Mm,
And it's because you were not looking at applying it as you were learning. For you, that was a theoretical exercise, which is why just
precisely.
attending a workshop is not the way people will build a skill. So I wrote a
Mm,
piece yesterday on LinkedIn, which is about how chaotic technology like generative AI, which is
mm,
chaotic technology, it's happening, in every place in bursts and
mm,
explosions, as compared to sequential technology, like let's say the mobile network is a fantastic example. You have, 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G. Each one has been spaced out by about 8 or 10 years. So
mm.
it's given people time to learn, people time to adapt, build different technologies around that, upgrade hardware, software. So it's been a sort of, smooth sequential piece.
Yeah.
When you look at AI, generative AI is chaotic. Chaotic tech is happening everywhere simultaneously, all at once, multiple things. Today it's only text, then it becomes multimodal, so you can do voice, text, video, all of that in no time at all. So
Yeah.
and therefore, if you're going to wait to think about it in that sequential manner, so when I've worked with organizations, one of the things that I find that they struggle with is, can you tell us what to invest in? And my answer
Mm,
is, I don't know. Because this whole mindset that you will pin it on somebody and say, but you told me that
yeah.
you have to invest in this, that is not good enough. You have to
Yeah.
try it for
Yeah.
yourself. Let people experiment. Let them work on something. So
Yeah.
don't use the technology to build something for the employees. Work with them to create the technology.
So, on what basis that one needs to invest on when it comes to learning a new skill, especially in the chaotic world that we are a part of?
If you're going to start learning something because you're going to be able to use it, then you're going to be disappointed because look at coding. I mean, you may, when you started doing engineering, you may have learned a different coding language, and
Mm,
today, that language has changed, and also you're moving to a no code world. Yeah. So the hard skills will keep changing.
mm.
And therefore, if you are going to sort of start to say that, okay, I'm going to do this certification because it's going to get me a promo, it's not going to work ever.
Mhm.
And the pace of change is so rapid that before you completed the course, it's obsolete, and therefore
It's
you
already
will not.
changed.
But if you are curious, you'll start learning a lot of things and you'll be able to bring them together and connect the dots. And I think opportunities actually work better like that. So you will
Mm,
create combinations. As I was growing up, I spent a lot of years doing a lot of time in radio. I did a lot of work for All India Radio at that time. That was the only channel possible. And as I was doing that, I didn't really think that what am I going to gain out of this? What am I going to learn out of this? How much will I earn out of this? I never thought about it. In fact, it was so much of fun that I made great friends. I learned a ton of stuff about how media works and all of that, but over a very long span of time. And then nothing happened with that. I mean, I was doing my own professional journey of being in talent management. And then at a point of time, podcasting took off. And then I was able to bring that experience of working in radio and television and bringing that learning into podcasting. And now, the video podcasts and all of that. Podcasting earlier was just audio, then it became video. And so the opportunity to keep changing happens because the stuff that you learn, you simply connect the dots and use
mm,
it. I think the way you think about learning has to change. It cannot be transactional, because if you learn something with the idea that, okay, I'm going to learn it in 2 years. There's a friend of mine who's worked in translation, has a degree. Her daughter has a degree in translation, and right when the person has graduated, now you have a scenario. AI does your translation to every language possible. So what do you do with that? Therefore, people, when they are looking at that, they will have to keep finding different contexts in which this can work.
mm. Yeah.
So translation, yes, it can be done by AI, but maybe there is a person who needs to talk to you and you understand a lot more about the context and translate on that. Um, because when I look at what I can translate my own writing into another language, I would do it very differently from the mechanical translation that AI does. So, or drawing for that matter, I think I enjoy doing that a lot more than what AI will create. So I
Mm,
think it's a lot of that. Don't do it with the intent of monetizing it right away. Uh,
yeah.
Education is a long-term game.
Yeah. So we're looking at the curiosity and continue to learn and continue to invest in learning so that you can connect the dots. I think that's where your ability to have that multidisciplinary approach has worked for you. But was there any subject in your school days that you did not like?
Yeah, much of it. I mean, uh, I didn't like the sciences, so I decided I'm going to do, commerce. I did commerce and I realized I didn't quite enjoy the accounting and bookkeeping part of it. So I moved into economics. I
Mm,
did economics. I realized I didn't quite enjoy the econometric modeling part of it, the statistics and that part of it. I enjoyed the behavioral economics, but there was no subject called behavioral economics at that
mm,
point of time. Today, I think I would have loved to, work in that space. For that matter, when I did work in HR, there are things that I discovered I didn't enjoy doing as much. I mean, compensation and benefits. I
mm.
didn't quite enjoy doing that. But there were other things that I learned. So instead of worrying about what I didn't like, I would sort of focus on what I like and sort of move in that direction.
Mm.
So I think, yeah, plenty of subjects which I didn't like.
Yeah. Abhijit, as you're just sharing this, I did not like this and I moved to another subject. I did not like that. That's the reason I moved to another subject. I think the context that you're born in and your family members play a very vital role because,
Of
you
course.
know, I don't think that as a child, if I would have gone to my parents that, hey, as much as I've started my engineering, but I'm not enjoying my engineering, I would like to leave and get into something else. I don't know how they would have responded, but because of my own internal fear, I would not have gone to them. So, what do you think? What is the role that your childhood has played in helping you become the person that you've become?
Mm. I think my parents they were very comfortable with me trying out many different things. So,
Mm,
there was a point of time I was trying to learn different musical instruments. And
mm,
one summer it was all about learning to play the guitar. Then next summer it was all about learning percussion. So I bought myself a bongo. Then I said, no, 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 this is not fun. Then I wanted to learn the tabla. And I experimented with a lot of different things. Then I moved
mm,
to painting and tried out many different things. And then it's only much later that you begin to bring a lot of those back together. So,
mm,
all the music that I heard, the Indian classical music that I did a lot of listening to, that really changed the way that I listen to music today, or
mm,
those hours of sketching, all kinds of things. I used to copy Lakshman's drawings a lot, at
mm,
that point of time. Then I started looking at other cartoonists like Mario Miranda. Then I fell in love with Ajit Nayanan's drawings and all of that. I mean, that sort of really you evolve your that particular thing, something stay with you, and some
mm,
things you drop them on the way and then you pick it up again. So
mm.
I think life is a journey of continuously trying out many different things.
Yeah.
When I was growing up, I didn't have access to things like jazz. I mean, today I do, so I can listen to all kinds of things. When I was growing up, I didn't have access to listening to music from other countries. I would have never
Mm.
heard of Korean pop. Today I do, or Mongolian rock. Today I do. So you can, listen to it. So it's really all of that.
So, what are you curious about these days? What's next for you?
Really, I am sort of really curious about how 8 billion people will readjust to the world of work, which is getting shaped by AI. How is that going to change? So I'm curious about that. I'm curious about how the creative fields, like whether it's filmmaking or music composition, how is that going to change because
Mm,
of technology? I wonder how journalism as a field is going to leverage technology to become more powerful and shape the world with their ideas. How do we make? There are a whole lot of questions actually.
So, how are you fulfilling your appetite for that? What do you
We
study?
live in
Who
the
do you
golden age
interact
of
with?
we live in the golden age of information. Everything that you want to read and available is just, a tap away. So you want to read a book, somebody mentions a book that really mattered to them, you have access to it. I mean, so it's so much easier to do that. You want to learn a subject, just go on the internet and, follow your curiosity, go down that rabbit hole. And there are people who compile stuff, there are people who do depth. You can follow both, you can follow one. So
Mm,
just, I mean, anyone who says that I don't have the resources has not
mm,
thought about how to leverage the world, And there are people who are happy to teach you. I mean, I've always been blessed to see that there are people who will patiently sit down and, teach you about whatever you are trying to learn, music,
mm,
art, theater. They will say, you're interested in learning it, come join me and try this out. So
mm,
I've
mm,
learned a
mm.
whole lot of things like that. I was just told somebody, I want to learn what you do, and they will say, okay, come become my apprentice, and I've happily done that. So I think
Yeah, yeah,
you just
yeah.
follow that.
Abhijit, last question. With all these diverse experiences that you have been able to accumulate for yourself, and all those experiments and the curiosities that you have been able to bring to this world, uh,
Mhm.
what do you know for sure with 100% certainty and surety?
That I know nothing about anything, because each of these subjects is so massive. The moment you start reading, you realize how
Mm,
much more there is to learn. So, it's the boundary shifting option of the horizon. You kind of think that you've picked up a couple of things. The context changes, the technology changes, the subject changes. The discipline that I trained myself in, that's completely different today. The focus is different. The focus was a lot more on employee relations and law and all of that. Today, it's on developing the human capabilities, and it's getting shaped by so many different things. So the field has
mm,
changed. So, did I know enough about the field when I started? The answer is no. I was learning
mm.
out there. Do I know enough about a field today that I'm pursuing? No, I'm learning about that. So I think it'll keep shifting. There is no two ways about that. So you realize that, but you also have faith in your ability to learn from so many different sources of wonderful people that I've learned from, or the stuff that I read online and learn through my conversations with people like you. So each question that you have, it's sort of, it's, the podcasts are also wonderful opportunities to learn. So I kind of think that that's a big opportunity.
Thank you. And by the way, what is this background about? I'm very curious when I saw that.
Oh, this is, it's the human being playing chess with the machine.
Got
So
it.
you kind of see
Got
that.
it. Got it. Now I can see that. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Super, Abhijit. Thank you so much for being so generous in sharing your thoughts. I wanted to experiment this conversation with you. In most of my conversation, there's a sequence that I follow. But this time I said, let me just challenge myself and see, let's see where we go from this conversation. So I had the broad categories that I wanted to cover with you. And thank you so much for being so generous and playful in this conversation. Shukran.
thank you so much for having me, Gaurav. It was lovely, very lovely to talk to you, and we'll stay in touch. Take care.